Ashlee, we'll never know the answer to this question, but just what's your guess as to how different it would be, the sentencing, if he wins, Mr. Trump, or if he loses?
We'll never know the answer to
Right.
that, Jake. And I look at this through the lens of politics. And I think at the end of the day, and we saw it in the CNN polls this week, voters in all of the 7 swing states care about the economy. And we also saw for over a year now how the indictments and the verdicts ultimately affected solidifying the Trump base and maybe even bringing more into the fold. So I would argue that there's a really big debate next week, a chance to turn the page on all of this messaging and get back to the focus on the economy, immigration, crime, the things that voters actually care about.
That's the challenge, right? Is Trump actually being able to stay on a message that resonates with the voters that he needs to win versus the base
we
he already
aired
has?
a snippet of him rolling through every woman who's ever accused him of sexual harassment. It's not really a positive campaign message.
He's the only one who keeps relitigating his own negatives. He could have used that opportunity to not talk about his negatives and maybe talk about the other candidates, but he just, something about him makes him think that if he just keeps relitigating the past, that will feel better and help him, and all the polls are proving the opposite.
And well, what do you think of
We've seen this from President Trump before. This is no surprise. We've lived through this it's our third election cycle with him.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, he's got a great opportunity next week to draw a contrast with Vice President Harris and hold her accountable for some of the decisions made in the Biden administration that she hasn't really had to answer to yet.
So what's your take on all this? Because obviously, I'm sure his campaign advisors don't want him to spend 40 to 50 minutes rolling through every woman who's ever accused him of sexual impropriety.
Well, not just that. I mean, look at what they've done for the last several weeks. They have tried to control a man who is uncontrollable by putting him in front of these smaller venues with smaller crowds with very specific topics that are on the agenda. For example, giving a speech in North Carolina on the economy or talking about immigration or crime. They are trying to get him out there talking about the 3 things that they think could win him this election, particularly when voters are showing in the polls that is what they care about. This is not what they expected him to do. And I'll tell you, when I was asking questions about what this was going to look like, nobody said he's going to go up there and ramble about all the women who have accused him of various sexual improprieties over the last several years. They said he's probably going to attack the justice system, but then move on and take questions. He obviously did not take questions at all, which isn't surprising because this is the environment where he generally doesn't. He goes off, but he was clearly angry today. He even said he was disappointed in his legal team when he was standing there with them, standing behind him, forward-facing in front of all of the cameras, said he was disappointed in what he saw during the hearing earlier in the day. It's very difficult to be Donald Trump's lawyer, but that's obviously not what his campaign advisors had hoped for coming out of this.
We've heard a lot of we in the media have heard a lot of criticism from Democrats that we're not covering Mr. Trump's age and acuity as we did President Biden's. Do you agree with that?
I think there's an interesting contrast now that both candidates are no longer heading into their 80s. Right, that there is a significant generational difference, and you can see that in the way the campaigns are expressing different concepts. I mean, the idea of joy being a campaign message was not something you would have anticipated 6 months ago. And Trump is now in that difficult position of not only having to defend a previous record of being in office, which is, Kamala Harris is still her own person and was vice president, not the president. So not only does Trump have to defend his record, he also now has to get past the age element.
What do you think?
I don't think it's a surprise to any voter who supports President Trump or those who are considering supporting him what his age is. We know. He's been with us for a long time, and it's a jump ball race. Look at Real Clear Politics. The markets today still have President Trump up 2. And in the battleground states, it's a tie. So we can litigate age about President Trump all we want. This isn't news to the American public, and I don't think it changes a thing.